What happens when America's most famous hiking trail becomes a hunting ground? Something that doesn't leave footprints, something that stalks from just beyond the tree line. The two hikers in this story thought they'd spend 5 peaceful days on the Appalachian Trail in Virginia. They'd done this section before. But this time, the quiet felt wrong. Some locals near Pearisburg say there's something in those mountains that hunts people, something that's been taking hikers since the 1970s, and whatever it is, it's still out there. Listen to this story because what happened to these hikers is far beyond terrifying. Welcome to Unexplained Accounts, a place where the ordinary fades into shadow and the unexplainable comes alive. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and become part of our ever-growing community of the curious. Hikers keep vanishing on the Appalachian Trail. I'm writing because people keep asking what happened to my hiking partner. They say maybe getting this down will help me process it. I don't know if it was an animal or a person or something else, but we went out there for a peaceful 5 days on the trail. My partner Jake and I had been planning this section hike since January. We both needed to disconnect, get away from work and screens and everything. The Appalachian Trail in Southwest Virginia seemed perfect. We'd hiked parts of it before, never had any problems. But this time felt different from the start. I can't explain it exactly, but the moment we stepped onto that trail in late April 2024, something felt off. The air was too still. The woods were too quiet. We thought this section would be easy. We were wrong. In late April 2024, Jake and I started a 47-mile section hike from Pearisburg, Virginia, heading north toward Catawba. We'd chosen this stretch because it was supposed to be moderate, nothing too steep, plenty of shelters along the way. We're both experienced hikers, done sections in Vermont and Pennsylvania before. This was supposed to take us 5 days, averaging about 10 miles a day. The plan was to camp at designated shelters, resupply at one road crossing, then finish near McAfee Knob. When we started at the trailhead just outside Pearisburg, the weather was perfect. Mid-60s, clear skies, light breeze, but the trail felt empty in a way that didn't sit right. We didn't see any other hikers that first day, which was strange for late April. Through hikers should have been passing through. The first shelter we reached, Doc's Knob Shelter, was about 8 miles in. No one had signed the trail register in 3 days. The woods around it were dead silent. No birds, no squirrels, nothing. Jake joked that maybe we had the whole trail to ourselves. But standing there as the sun dropped behind the ridge, the quiet didn't feel peaceful. It felt like something was listening. It started with sounds we couldn't explain. That first night at Doc's Knob, around 11:30 p.m., I woke up to what sounded like footsteps circling the shelter. Heavy, deliberate steps on the leaves and twigs outside. At first, I figured it was a bear or maybe a deer passing through. Jake was still asleep. I listened for maybe 5 minutes, then the footsteps stopped. When I checked in the morning, there were no prints around the shelter, just undisturbed leaves. The second night, we camped at Bailey Gap Shelter, about 9 miles further north. This time we both heard it, around 1:00 a.m., breathing. Close enough that it sounded like it was right outside the shelter's open front. Deep, slow breaths, almost rhythmic. Jake whispered that it was probably another hiker snoring in their tent nearby, but when we got up to check at first light, there were no other tents, no other packs. We were alone. 2 days into the hike, we started seeing movement during the day. Quick flashes of something pale between the trees, always about 50 or 60 feet off the trail. Too tall to be a deer, too thin to be a person in hiking gear. Every time I'd stop to get a better look, whatever it was would slip deeper into the forest. Jake saw it too. We didn't talk about it much, just kept hiking. That third morning, we found something that made us both stop cold. Our food bag, which we'd hung properly from a bear cable the night before, was on the ground. The rope had been cut, not chewed through, cut clean with something sharp. Inside the bag, our trail mix was gone, but everything else was untouched. Jake said maybe someone was messing with us, some local kids playing pranks on hikers, but we were miles from any road. The worst part came that afternoon. We were hiking a narrow section along a ridge when Jake noticed prints in a muddy patch near a stream crossing. Boot prints at first glance, but when we looked closer, they were wrong. The prints were barefoot. Each toe was too long, stretched out like fingers. The stride was too wide, maybe 4 feet between steps. And they didn't just cross the trail. They circled our tent 3 times before leading back into the woods. That's when Jake said we should check the trail register at the next shelter. Sorry for the quick interruption. I just wanted to take a moment to say thank you for being part of Weird Encounters. Lately, the channel hasn't been shown as much across this platform, so if you're enjoying this story, please take a second to like, subscribe, and leave a comment. Your support really helps new listeners discover these stories and keeps the channel going strong. Now, let's get back to this story. The trail register at Pickle Branch Shelter was different from the others. We reached it just before sunset on our 4th day. The shelter sat in a small clearing, surrounded by thick rhododendron that made everything feel closed in. Jake pulled out the register, a waterproof notebook where hikers leave messages and notes. He went quiet as he flipped through the pages. There were entries going back to early March. Most were normal, trail names and mileage updates, weather observations. But then Jake showed me what he'd found. April 18th, just 10 days before we started. Something followed us for 3 miles past Sims Gap. Not an animal, don't camp north of here. April 22nd, different handwriting. Heard voices in the woods all night. No one was there, leaving at first light. April 24th, if you're reading this, turn back. It's not worth it. The last entry was dated April 26th, 2 days before we started our hike. It just said, "It watches from the ridgeline." Jake still had cell service, barely 1 bar. He pulled out his phone and started searching. It took a few minutes, but he found something. A missing persons report from 2022. A hiker named David Brennan, 34, from North Carolina. Last seen on this section of the AT near Catawba Mountain. His car was found at a trailhead. His tent and gear were found at a campsite. Everything still inside. But David was gone. They searched for 2 weeks, never found him. According to the article Jake showed me, there were others. Sarah Mitchell disappeared in 2019 while hiking solo through this area. Her pack was found hanging from a tree branch, 12 feet off the ground. In 2016, 2 college students, Emily Tran and Marcus Webb, vanished after camping near War Spur Shelter. Their families reported strange voicemails, heavy breathing, and what sounded like someone saying their names over and over. Jake said we should report what we were experiencing, call a ranger, but there was something else in the register he wanted me to see. Tucked between the pages was a hand-drawn map. Someone had marked locations with X's, maybe 6 or 7 spots between Pearisburg and Catawba. Next to each X was a date and initials. The most recent was less than a month old. I don't know what made me suggest it, but I told Jake we should follow the trail away from the shelter, see if there was anything off the main path. About a 1/4 mile past the Blue Blaze Trail that led to a spring, we found it. An old hunting stand, maybe 30 feet up in an oak tree. The ladder rungs were rotted, but someone had reinforced them with fresh rope. At the base of the tree were items that didn't belong. A blue backpack with the name Brennan written on the tag in permanent marker. A pair of hiking boots, women's size 7, caked in dried mud. A tent, ripped and weathered, stuffed behind a fallen log. Jake climbed up to the stand. When he came back down, his face was pale. He said there was more up there. A sleeping bag still laid out like someone had been using it. Empty food wrappers, recent ones. And a journal. We opened it. The handwriting was shaky, some entries barely legible. The first page was dated May 2023. The writer didn't leave a name, just wrote about hearing something in the woods, something that followed them for days. The entries got more frantic as the pages went on. It knows I'm here. It watches me sleep. Can't leave. Tried 3 times. It herds me back. The last entry was dated 3 days ago. It said, "It's not alone anymore. I can hear them talking at night. I think they're deciding what to do with me. I can't." The rest of the page was torn out. That night, we didn't sleep. We sat in the shelter with our backs against the wall, headlamps on, watching the tree line. Around 2:30 a.m., we heard it again. Footsteps, closer this time. Then whispers, 2 voices, maybe 3, speaking in a language I didn't recognize. The words were low and rhythmic, almost like chanting. Jake grabbed his phone and hit record. The whispers stopped immediately, like they knew. When we played it back, the audio was mostly static, but at the 14-second mark, you could hear something. A voice, deep and rasping, saying what sounded like, "Still here." We both started having the same nightmare. Jake told me about his first. He was standing in the middle of the trail at night, and something was walking toward him from both directions. He couldn't see their faces, just pale shapes moving in the dark. When they got close, they stopped and stared, not moving, barely breathing. He said he'd wake up drenched in sweat, heart pounding. My dream was almost identical. Same trail, same figures, same feeling of being trapped. After that night, Jake wanted to leave. We could hike out to the nearest road crossing, maybe 6 miles south, and hitch back to Pearisburg. But I told him we were almost done. Just 1 more day to McAfee Knob, then we'd be finished. I don't know why I pushed to keep going. Maybe I didn't want to admit something was wrong. The next morning, Jake's sleeping bag had been moved. He'd zipped it up and left it on his pad inside the shelter. When he woke up, it was folded neatly outside the shelter, 10 feet away. Neither of us had heard anything. That afternoon, we ran into another hiker coming from the opposite direction. A man in his 50s, hiking fast, looking over his shoulder every few minutes. When he saw us, he stopped and said, "You need to get off this trail right now." His hands were shaking. He told us he'd camped near Catawba Mountain 2 nights ago and woke up to something standing outside his tent. He said it was tall, unnaturally thin, and it didn't move like a person. When he yelled, it backed away into the trees but didn't leave. It stayed there, just past the edge of his flashlight beam, watching him until sunrise. He said he packed up and started hiking south in the dark. He hadn't stopped moving since. Jake looked at me. That's when he showed me his arm. 3 long scratches ran from his shoulder to his elbow, fresh and red. He said he'd woken up with them that morning. He didn't remember anything happening. The recording on his phone had been deleted. We didn't delete it. We broke camp just after sunrise. The plan was simple. Hike hard, make it to the road crossing near Catawba Valley, and get out. We could cover the 11 miles by early afternoon if we pushed. Jake didn't say much as we packed. He kept looking at the scratches on his arm. The trail climbed steadily through dense forest. Every sound made us turn around. Branches breaking, leaves rustling, the wind moving through the canopy. Around 9 a.m., we stopped for water near a rocky outcrop. That's when I felt it. The sensation of being watched, so strong it made my skin crawl. I turned around. About 40 feet behind us, standing in the middle of the trail, was something I'll never forget. It was tall, maybe 7 feet, but hunched forward like its spine curved wrong. Its skin was pale gray, almost colorless, stretched tight over a frame that looked too thin to support itself. The limbs were long, disproportionate, arms hanging past its knees, its legs bent at angles that didn't make sense, like the joints were reversed. The head was tilted to one side, and I could see matted hair, dark and tangled, hanging down past where shoulders should be. It didn't have a face I could process, just hollow spaces where eyes should be, and a mouth that opened too wide, showing teeth that were stained and uneven, not like fangs, just too many of them. Jake grabbed my arm. His voice cracked when he said, "What is that?" The thing didn't move. It stood there, breathing slow and heavy, making a wet sound with each exhale. The smell hit me then, carried on the breeze, rot and damp earth and something chemical, like old batteries. I took a step back. It tilted its head the other way like it was studying us. Then it smiled. I ran. Jake was right behind me. We didn't stay on the trail, just crashed through the underbrush, branches tearing at our clothes and faces. I could hear it behind us, not running, just moving fast through the trees. Branches snapped. Something heavy hit the ground with each step, a rhythmic thud that got closer. Jake tripped over a root and went down hard. I grabbed his pack and hauled him up. His knee was bleeding, but he kept moving. We scrambled down a steep embankment, half sliding, half falling, until we hit a creek bed. We followed the water downstream, splashing through the shallow current. My lungs burned. Jake was limping badly. Behind us, the sounds stopped. We didn't stop running until we found the trail again, maybe a mile south of where we'd been. When we finally collapsed, gasping for air, I looked back toward the ridge line. It was there, standing at the edge of the trees, perfectly still, arms hanging at its sides. The distance was too far to see details, but I knew it was watching. Jake was crying. He said his knee might be sprained. I couldn't feel my hands. When I checked over my shoulder again, it was gone. But I knew it hadn't left. We hitched a ride into Catawba with a local who drove us to a small motel on the outskirts. Jake could barely walk. His knee had swollen to twice its normal size. We checked in, locked the door, and collapsed. That night, around 3 a.m., I woke up to knocking. 3 slow knocks on the door, then silence. I looked through the peephole. The parking lot was empty. When I turned back, Jake was standing at the window, still asleep. His eyes were open but unfocused. He was whispering something I couldn't understand. I shook him awake. He didn't remember getting up. The next morning, there were muddy footprints on the walkway outside our room, barefoot, long toes, the same as we'd seen on the trail. The front desk said no one had been in that section of the parking lot overnight. We tried calling the local sheriff. The deputy who answered said they'd had reports before, missing hikers, strange activity in the mountains. He said they never found anything solid. Before he hung up, he told us to stay away from the trail after dark. That night, Jake woke me screaming. He said someone had been standing at the foot of his bed, tall and gray, smiling with too many teeth. When I turned on the light, his blanket had been pulled down to the floor. The window was open. We hadn't opened it. We drove south that same day, didn't stop until we hit Roanoke, almost 50 miles away. We stayed with Jake's brother for 2 nights. Both nights, around 2 a.m., Jake woke up saying he could hear whispers outside the window. His brother didn't hear anything. We went back 3 days later to get our car from the trailhead parking lot. It was the middle of the day, bright sun, traffic on the road. We thought we'd be safe. The car was there, untouched. But when I opened the driver's door, the smell hit me. That same rot and damp earth smell from the trail. Inside, on the dashboard, was the journal we'd found at the hunting stand. We'd left it there. Someone had brought it back. The last page had new writing. fresh ink. It said, "You left too soon." Jake refused to get in. He walked to the road and called a taxi. I grabbed what I could from the car and followed him. As we waited, I looked back toward the trailhead. At the edge of the parking lot, where the trail disappeared into the trees, something stood watching us. Tall, pale, perfectly still. When the taxi arrived, I got in. Jake got in. I looked back one more time. It was gone. That was 6 months ago. We haven't been back to Virginia. Jake moved to Florida, said he needed to be somewhere flat where he could see for miles. We don't talk much anymore. When we do, we don't mention the trail. I still have nightmares. Always the same. I'm back on that section between Pearisburg and Catawba, and something is walking toward me through the trees. Sometimes late at night, I think I see it. A tall figure standing in parking lots at the edge of wooded areas, always just beyond the streetlights. When I blink, it's gone. I've done research, found at least 9 missing persons cases in that area over the past 15 years. Hikers who vanished without explanation. Some of their gear was found, some wasn't. None of the bodies were ever recovered. Was it something that's always been there, living in those mountains? Some kind of territorial predator? Or maybe something worse, something that shouldn't exist? Jake is still having the nightmares too. He told me last week he can't shake the feeling that it's still looking for us. I don't know what's on the Appalachian Trail between Pearisburg and Catawba, but I know it's still there, and I think it remembers us. And so, another strange encounter fades away. A trick of the mind or something far more unsettling. That's for you to decide. Thank you so much for watching my stories. Make sure you hit that like button, subscribe, and turn on notifications. Your support is what keeps this channel going.